My name is Glenn. I'm from Cleveland, and I am a craft brewer, a rookie craft brewer, and I really enjoy what I'm doing. I started out about 3 years ago with a little 1-gallon kit that you buy in a brew store. It only made 10 to 12 beers, and it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. My first batch turned out pretty good. I couldn't knock it, but since that time I've been brewing more. The name of my little home brew company is called Taiwan, and that comes from fly fishing. You can see I have my little fly fishing fly on my hat and my shirt. But anyway, fly fishing and brewing craft beer are a lot of fun. And what I'd like to do is show you and share with you some things that I learned in the first few years about brewing. And it's a pretty good experience. So follow with me as I go along with this video. Well, when I started out with that 1 little gallon jug. And you know, the beer was pretty good, but boy, what a lot of work to make 10 beers. Messing your kitchen up was a disaster. So anyway, I researched around and visited brew stores, and everybody kept pointing toward the Grainfather. So I bought one. And over the last 2.5, 3 years, I've brewed some pretty good beer. I've had some flops. But the main problem that I had was some of it was in the design, and I had a lot of breakdowns and problems with it. So I thought, you know, I'm going to get a better system. I'm going to upgrade. So I looked at the Blackman, I looked at Spike, I looked all around. But I kept coming back to the Brau system. Something about it and the things that I was missing with the Grainfather were showing up with the Brau system. So I'm going to share these things that I found between the Grainfather and Brau with you now. Here are the two brew kettles, the Grainfather and the Brau. Now I will tell you, there's a lot of difference between these two units. When I pulled this Brau out of the box, it was like, there's some stainless put into this. There's some metal in it. And I like that because it has the triclover fittings on it that are welded on, and it's nice where you can move your hoses around and do different things that you want to in the batch. And the Grainfather, I mean, it looks pretty, but it's made very thin. It's made like a coffee kettle, and just kind of cheapy there. So just overall, the metals on it are completely different. So now we're going to talk about the grain basket, how friendly they are to work with. The Grainfather has a grain basket that you use this little stainless steel handle to put in there, and to get in. And you better be careful that you get it in the holes, because if you don't, you'll pull this up so far and the basket will come loose, and it's a pretty nice mess. So, but the Grainfather is taller and the basket is taller, so you have to raise it much higher than you do with the Brau system. You know, it's gotta be pretty tall to get it up there. But anyway, let's look at the baskets to start with. There's the handle. It's not much of a handle, really. In the bottom of the Grainfather basket, there's a screen down there, and the problem that I had with it was the screen kept coming loose, and my grain would go around the screen and end up down in the pump, and that would stop the pump up. So I'm a welder, so what I did is I welded the screen in the bottom of it all the way around to keep the lid in the bottom, or the screen in the bottom, from coming loose and letting grain go around it. But with the Grainfather, you have to put your grain in, and then you have to put the screen in with the gasket all the way around the edge of it. And it's a real nightmare to get in there without the gasket coming loose. And then after you get this in there, you have to hook all this hardware up in the bottom of it for the wort to drain right, or to overflow right. So, I mean, that's just a bunch of hardware that you shouldn't have to deal with. Now, I'm going to look at the Brau system now, and it's made in one piece. The grain basket is very nice. It's very heavy. And the pros I like about it are the wort comes in and it circulates through the top of your basket, and you don't have to have all that hardware in the middle of it. And the water runs around and goes straight down the middle. Now, there's something that I really like about this, and I watched his videos, the Brau videos, and he was talking about throttling your pump to keep the wort from overflowing. Well, when I got my unit, he took care of that. He put a whole row of holes in the top, so if it gets too high, these holes will let the wort go down the side and back into the bottom of the kettle. And I thought, well, that's really great. And so he was thinking, the bottom of it has more holes in it now, so it lets more wort go through it. So I really like that about it. Both these units have lids on them. The Grainfather has a glass lid that is kind of a pain to deal with because the way the wort's circulating, if you have to take it off or put it back on, it's not a lot of fun to have to finagle with that while you're spilling wort all over you and all over the unit. And you have to tighten everything back down. To be honest with you, the glass lid is a pain because you can't see through it when you're doing a mash or a boil because it's all fogged up. It's a mute point. Now, another thing is, if you drop this, you're going to break it. And I have done that. I can testify. It's a mess to clean up, and you have to spend about another $50 and get another lid. Another thing I don't like about it, it has like about 1.25 inch hole in the top up here. And the honeybees and the flies love to go down in there. And you'll look down in there and look at your mash going on, and there's a fly floating around the top. You'll remember that when you drink your beer. There was a fly in the top of it. So anyway, you look at the Brau system. It has a completely closed lid on it. Now, if I want to see my wort being brewed or check on it, I can just lift the lid up like a pot in the kitchen. I can look and see what's going on. Here's another little thing I want to look at is the screens in the bottom of the systems. This is a Brau system, and this is the Grainfather. In the Grainfather, you have this little filter here that snaps onto the port in the bottom. And what I really don't like about it, it has this little rubber cap on the end that is always coming off. And then on the side, you have this little, I guess, inlet plug, and it has a hole cut into one side, as you can see. Well, if you get this in plugged in backward and you put it in here, you're not able to drain as much wort. So you have to take it out and turn it upside down for it to get to work to 100%. Now, over on the Brau system, you have this filter, and it's pretty neat. The system does not come with the little drip attachment here, and it just kind of plugs in with a couple O-rings. It's a nice piece of stainless steel. And by itself, it goes in and goes down to the bottom without the filter in it, and it drains like about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. Now, if you're putting hops in here and you don't want to use a hop basket, you can use this filter screen. It's pretty neat. It has a little silicone gasket around the bottom, and you can see that it has some nice fine screens in it. But the nice thing about it, it has a lot of area to it. And all you do is drop your dip tube in there, and then you go to the side and you wiggle that into the port. Now, it has that silicone seal that goes around it, and it keeps your hops and your grains from getting back into your drip tube. This has a huge amount of space to drain your wort and to pump it. And you can see the size of the Grainfather, and it's much, much smaller, and it always stops up on me. And you can see that the holes on the Grainfather are much, much bigger. So you get your hops and wort and grain that goes here and usually gets stopped up in the Grainfather pump. So this is a really good option that they have. It is an add-on. You get the drip tube and the screen. It's like $75. I have the Brau and the Grainfather system setting side by side. And on the Brau system, you can see the watermarks very clearly. I'm about 2 foot away from it, and I'm down to the kettle. So the markings show up really well with that black etching on them. Now, if you come back over to the Grainfather, and I'm about 2 foot away from it, you cannot see any of the markings. Now, the closer you get, I'm right at the top of the kettle now, and you can see some of the markings, but it's very difficult to read the markings in the Grainfather. And that's really important to know what my levels are, whether I'm putting water in for my mash or doing my boil off, so I'll know exactly where I'm at the end. We're going to talk about the pumps now on both these two units, which is very, very important. The Grainfather has a very small pump. It has a plastic impeller on it. The Grainfather is almost twice as big, just the motor itself. And it has a stainless steel impeller on it. And that makes a lot of difference because I've tested it, and the Brau moves almost 3 times the amount of water with a higher pressure. And that's really good. And the reason I like that is because sometimes I brew down low and I want to pump my wort up or a longer distance to a refrigerator that I have set up to ferment in. And that makes a lot of difference. But the Grainfather's little pump here, it gets stopped up very easily with any kind of grain or hops or anything. And then you have to take it apart and you have to blow air through it trying to get it to run. And you know, that's no fun. You get burnt with wort, or you make a big mess and you lose your beer. But the Brau system, I like it because it has the tri-clover fittings on it. And I'm eventually going to take this pump off and build myself a cart and put the pump down on the cart, so I can do that with a hose and a couple fittings. Another thing, it has a very nice valve on the side of it here that you can throttle your wort with, your pump. And it also has a safety on it that you have to raise or lower to keep and turn it on or off on yourself. You know you're doing it by working with that safety. But the pump on the Brau is much stronger, more pressure, and it's very easy to clean. Both these units have temperature thermostats in the bottom of them. And the Grainfather has one that just plugs into the side. It's kind of handy, but the problem with it, it's really kind of loose, doesn't want to snap in, and there's slack around it. So I've been wondering, how accurate of brews have I really been making in the last 3 years? So, you know. And another thing is, this is connected to the controller. And if this ever goes out, you cannot replace this part. You have to replace the whole controller. And they're, I think, about $150 or $175. So that's an added expense. Now, with the Brau system, it has a tri-clover clamp on the side of it, and the thermostat mounts right in there. It disconnects if you want it to be. And this whole thermostat unit looks much, much better and more secure because it's immersed in your wort. So I think it's going to be a lot more accurate. But the nice thing about this is, if this goes out, it's $40 and not $150. So these two units have 1650 watt heater elements in the both of them. And the Grainfather has their heater element below the stainless steel, below the bottom of the kettle. And it's just kind of like heating it like a frying pan. And inside you can see the bubbles just coming up from the middle of it like a boiling grease in a frying pan. And to me, that seems like it's just burning your wort. Maybe putting some off flavors in it and maybe charring taste. But I've seen some videos where they suggest taking a spatula and going in from the top and scraping it during the boil to keep that from sticking to the bottom of the kettle. And it kind of seems like a weird thing to do. Now, I've looked high and low for heater elements for this Grainfather if I have one go out. They're not to be found. And if it goes out, then you probably got $1,000 going to the trash can. Now, the Brau system has a replaceable heater element, 1650 watts, and they sell them, Brau does, for $65. And I think you can buy them about anywhere because it has a standard tri-clover clamp on it. Slide it back in, put your clamp on it, and you're back in business. You're cooking. So that is a very good option to have there to replace that. And another thing is the heater element is in the middle of the wort, and the pump is moving it, so your wort's moving over, nice and evenly. So you probably won't going to get any scorching or burning in there, and maybe no off flavors. We're going to run a heat test on the Grainfather and the Brau and see which one heats up the fastest. So what we're going to do is we have the Grainfather with the pump hooked up so we can circulate the water through it, and the same thing on the Brau system. We're going to circulate the water, and I always use a lid on my systems when I'm heating my mash water. It just makes it heat up faster. So we're going to do that, and we're going to pump the water through them, and that'll go over the thermostat, and the water should heat evenly, so we should be able to get a good reading of how fast they heat up. I have two circuits over here. They're 120 volt apiece, so both of them have even power, and I've got a timer right here, I ran a temperature test on both units. The Brau system heated 5.5 minutes faster than the Grainfather did. It also reached boil temperature almost 5 minutes faster than the Grainfather. Both units are priced very close to each other. The Grainfather is $9.98 and sales tax added to it, you're right at $1,100. The Brau system is $11.99, call it $12, and there's $50 shipping, so that's $12.50 for $1,100. That's about $150 more. But what you get for it is well worth the $150. You get a pump that's 3 times as strong. You got a heater that heats a lot faster. You have a heavier duty unit that's built and engineered better. Thermostat, heater elements that you can change out. You don't have to throw the whole system away. So it's really a win-win to buy a Brau system over a Grainfather. And it's something that's going to last you a lifetime. So I hope this helped you guys out, and good luck to you. And I'd like to see your comments at the bottom of the page. Good brewing. Hey, fellow brewers, watch my next video. I'm going to show you how to kill steam with a simple plate chiller. And it does work.